Well, good morning. What an amazing crowd. Shows such great community engagement. Welcome to our State of the State, presented by Dartmouth Health. I'm Heather McGrail, the President and CEO of the Greater Manchester Chamber, and we are so glad that you joined us this morning to hear directly and interact directly with Governor Ayotte. I want to first and foremost thank the Governor for being here today. Obviously, as you all know, a big part of the Chamber's mission is to be able to connect our business community to our elected officials. And of course, we cannot do that when our elected officials are not willing to take the time out of their busy schedules to be here today. So I want to give a big round of applause for Governor Ayotte for being here today. And also, of course, a huge thank you to the New Hampshire Institute of Politics for hosting us here. I know parking is a little bit tight with a crowd this big, but it's still an amazing venue, and we really appreciate their partnership. So again, a round of applause. And a few thanks to our sponsors. Once again, our presenting sponsor is Dartmouth Health. Our investing sponsor is Bellwether Community Credit Union, and we have advocate sponsors Lamont Hanley and Associates, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, and New Hampshire Healthy Families. Thank you so much to all our sponsors. And at this time, I'd like to invite Dr. Joanne Conroy, President and CEO of Dartmouth Health, to say a few words. Joanne.
Well, thank you, Heather. It's really great to be here, and we are very proud to be a presenting sponsor for this event. The Manchester Chamber is an outstanding organization keyed into what matters to business and industry, consumers, and communities alike. And I'm pleased that we have the opportunity to make introductory remarks to this audience and to warmly welcome Governor Kelly Ayotte for her first State of the State with the Chamber. Dartmouth Health continues to reinforce its commitment to the community, not only throughout northern New England, but also here in southern New Hampshire, where we care for 250,000 individuals. We are so proud to be able to care for patients through our specialty care services. We've expanded our ability to provide comprehensive cancer care in one location with the opening of our new radiation oncology center in Manchester on Hitchcock Way this coming summer. We have also added cardiac care services through our device clinic and our imaging services. And we've expanded Dartmouth Health Children's at River Road in Bedford. We partnered with Anthem, Blue Cross, and Manchester Fire Department to create a pilot program to screen firefighters for skin and lung cancers. And it makes a real difference in those individuals that we've screened and identified issues with early detection. I have no doubt that Governor Ayotte knows that it's a rough time right now for businesses, including healthcare, and maybe especially healthcare. There's tremendous uncertainty around policy and funding coming out of Washington, and we appreciate that a tight state budget is unsettling for everybody. But our partnerships that include federal, state, and local leaders will allow us to collaborate and make the right decisions together. Our recent partnership with Hampshire Hospital has been an excellent opportunity for us to work together to provide world-class mental health care to children and adolescents and assist the state in its goal to support this very vulnerable population. It is one of the most important partnerships that we've ever entered into. The care at Hampstead, and I was there last week and spent a half a day with the caregivers and some of the patients, that can change the entire trajectory of a young person's life. And our work there will matter in many ways that were not possible before. We're optimistic about the state legislator's omnibus bill because if passed, it will address one of the most challenging issues new moms face, postpartum depression. This bill would make sure that moms and babies get care they need right at the start, including mental health checkups for moms, and it would be a huge win for everyone. Real progress on a condition that has dire consequences if left untreated. As Granite Staters, continuing our partnerships requires us to be nimble, collaborative, and committed to doing the best we can for our patients, our families, and our communities. So thank you again for the opportunity to be part of the fabric of the Manchester community. And with that, I'll turn it back to Heather to introduce the governor of the great state of New Hampshire. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Conroy, and again, thanks to Dartmouth Health for your amazing support. I would also like to honor a few in the room. Former Mayor Bob Baines, we have over here. And I also saw former Nashua Mayor Donna Lee Loiseau. Where are you? How do you say it? Now that I butchered her name, I will never live that down. She'll follow up with me later. A few other recognitions, if you can bear with us. It's really important to us at the Greater Manchester Chamber that we recognize all of our board members. So I'm just going to ask, although each of you are fantastically, individually awesome, we're just going to have everyone stand as I say your name, and we'll hold our applause until the end. So our board chair, Trini Houghton of Ripple Effect Studio. Board vice chair, Kate Skuteris, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare. Ernesto Burden of Yankee Publishing. Dr. Greg Baxter, Elliott Health System. Jennifer Gilkey, Dartmouth Health. Ileana Ille, Morgan Stanley. Ken Cenas, St. Mary's Bank. Nicole Davis, Hoyle Tanner and Associates. Shana Horalchek, Sea Science Center. Mike Licata of Eversource Energy. Hopefully I didn't miss anyone. A big round of applause for our board of directors. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce Scott Spradling, who is an amazing chamber volunteer, the head of our Government Affairs Committee, and our moderator for today. Scott Spradling is an Emmy Award-winning former reporter, anchor, and political director for WMUR, as well as the owner of the Spradling Group, and a very, very dear friend of our chamber. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up Scott to run the show.
The water bottles are already flying. It'll be a big morning. So good morning, everyone. I'll just cut right to it. Thank you all for being here. It is my honor to help facilitate this conversation. For the next few minutes or so, we will break this down as such. I'll introduce the governor, and she'll have a few minutes to share some ideas and thoughts of what's going on in her world right now. And then she and I will sit down, and I have some prepared questions that came from our chamber membership about some of the ideas and issues that are priorities of our moment here in the spring of 2025. So we'll do that for a little bit, and then I promised the governor that she would have a little bit of time before we actually wrap up to be able to work the room just a little bit, because I know a lot of you probably would just like to be able to say hi. So without further ado, let me be provocative for a minute. As a graduate of Syracuse University, usually I'm not a huge fan of Penn State University grads. But there is a huge exception in this particular case. I've known the governor, I've known Kelly for a long time, and in watching the trajectory of her career from prosecutor to governor's legal counsel to the attorney general to the United States Senate into the private sector, and now elected governor, she has a wealth of experience, but you know, she's always been the same person that I knew from all those years ago. So I think that's a testament to her character, and I will preview one topic that we will have before this is over, and there's an addition to the family that is a very interesting and unique one that I'm going to ask her about. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Governor Kelly Ayotte.
Good morning, everyone. I'm really glad to be here with you this morning, and it's always great to be at the Institute of Politics, so I have to thank my friend Neil Levesque and his team, because there's so many great events that this institute hosts, and then I'm always glad to meet the young people that are involved in this institute, and you know, they have a unique perch with our First in the Nation primary, so it's awesome and great to see you today. And Scott, thank you for that great introduction. I've known Scott a long time and really appreciate his leadership, and Heather, your leadership as well of the chamber. Thank you for what you do, and the members of the board of directors, and of course, my former mayor, Mayor Donna Lee Lozo, who is fantastic, and then, of course, Mayor Bob Bain. So, well, I'll have to get my my feedback from the mayors after. So really appreciate all the work that they have done for this city and for my home city. So thank you. Manchester is such an important part of the state. I said during the campaign that where Manchester is where New Hampshire is. And I'm very proud of this city. I know all of you work very hard in this city, and that this is such an important part of our state, such an economic driver of our state. And I know that collectively, each of you in this room, whether you work in the business community, and I know there's some fantastic business leaders in this room, or in the nonprofit community, that this is a community where we're seeing some great things happen and even more opportunity. And I just want to make sure that there's one thing that we take away from this conversation today, that as governor, I want to be partnering with all of you to make sure that Manchester becomes even stronger and better in terms of a center of our state. It's really wonderful to see Dr. Conroy here today. I want to thank you for the partnership that the state has with you at Hampstead Hospital. As you identified, it's a very important partnership for our children and mental health, and making sure that even children that find themselves in the most difficult circumstances can then go on to reach their full potential. So thank you very much for that. So during my inauguration and my budget address, I talked about, we in New Hampshire, this is kind of supposed to be a state of the state address. We are in a different economic environment. So coming into office, the $2 billion of ARPA funds that came to New Hampshire, obviously that expired. In addition to that, in terms of some of the uncertainty, this is a different economic environment. So when you see what's happening in Concord on the budget, I put forth a budget that really reflected my priorities. The House of Representatives also just passed their version of the budget, and now it's going over to the Senate. So I would say this, kind of like we said in Washington, stay tuned as to how the sausage is going to be made, because you'll see a lot of differences between what I proposed in my budget and what the House of Representatives did. So I'm going to touch on a few areas that I think are really critical that the Senate takes up and restores some of the funding that I had put in my budget that are priorities for the state. So that's something I hope that Scott will ask me about, but I'll touch on briefly, and I look forward to the conversation that we're going to have. But here's the thing. Despite the challenges and the uncertainty of where we are, I could not be more optimistic about New Hampshire. I think New Hampshire is very well positioned in terms of our economic performance. And if you compare our economic performance with our neighbors, we still are really at the top of New England when it comes to our tax, our regulatory advantage. I'm meeting as a new governor, having been in office 3 months, with businesses that are talking to me about, for example, a business I met with recently from Maine, who said to me, listen, we're going to expand in New Hampshire dramatically, and I want to tell you why. Because it's easier to do business here, and we know that you will partner with us. In addition to that, we have the highest job growth in New England. People are moving to New Hampshire, and there is a lot of economic and new opportunities happening, and you see it right here in Manchester, whether it's Army and the proliferation of life sciences and regenerative medicine that we have happening here, new businesses downtown. So while we face some uncertainty in the economic level, I do believe that the best days of New Hampshire are ahead of us. And certainly one thing that I know, in order for us to make that happen, one of the challenges that we have to take on, and I know Manchester and Mayor Rouet are working hard on this, and others in this room, is housing, of course. Because workforce and housing development are hand in hand. And so some of the things that were in my budget, one of the priorities that the House did keep, which is an important one, is to make sure that the state models good behavior when it comes to permitting. And so the proposal that is in the budget right now is to take down the permitting process from the interaction of 4 agencies to 2 state agencies, and to make it a true 60-day process. So this is a really important thing that we can get done, because as you know, time is money when it comes to building a project and getting whether it's a commercial project or whether it's a housing project. And I think that's a first step we can do to really be a better role model for localities and municipalities when they make decisions to say, listen, we want to partner with you, but we're gonna model good behavior, so we need you to model good behavior as well. In addition to that, the first bill that I signed as governor was a bill called the CPACER legislation. That is going to just be another tool in the toolbox that allows you, when it comes to commercial property, to have a new finance mechanism that you can put in place for the energy portion of projects. So there are a number of other pieces of legislation that are pending in Concord right now that I hope will continue to move the needle on the ability to make sure that we can have more housing of all forms in the state and really encourage more building and development. Because if we can do that, and we can have more workforce housing in this state, we are going to continue to be able to recruit new businesses here, grow our businesses, and thrive as a state. And obviously taking on other issues like energy, childcare, we can talk more about that, but the housing issue remains at the core of all of it. Another key component I see to workforce that was really reflected in my budget proposal is, as I traveled the state, the gap that I heard most about in employment was very much career technical education and skills that we're missing in our communities. And these are skills of keeping our young people and those who are re-careering here in New Hampshire. And that's why investing in our community college system is so, so important. That career-ready education, making that accessible, supporting dual and concurrent enrollment. We have high school students who are taking those college classes and being able to get that credit that they can take with them, but in particular that credit from our community colleges, and being able to carry that with them is so important. So credentialing programs, making it easier to get training that they need to build a pipeline of talent for the trades like welding, HVAC, electrical work, healthcare workforce. These are important initiatives, and they're happening right here in Manchester. In fact, I see the head of our Manchester Community College, I believe, is in this room right here. Thank you. Recently, I had the opportunity to tour Spark Academy at the Manchester Community College with Mayor Rouet. It's amazing what they're doing there. Advanced manufacturing skills for these kids who are coming out with associate's degrees, partnering with our community college, and it's an excellent example of why this dual concurrent enrollment works. And it makes it more cost-effective for kids, right? If we can help them get those college credits while they're already in high school, get them excited about an opportunity in a field. There are many other great partnerships. BAE has one on information technology and cybersecurity. There are L&A programs here in Manchester, but also throughout the state that are helping us with our healthcare workforce. And so this is a priority for me because in my budget I propose keeping the tuition flat at the community colleges, and I also invested in dual and concurrent enrollment and credentialing programs. So that's an area that I hope is fully funded as we go over to the Senate, and I will be fighting for. In addition to that, you may have seen that there were cuts made to what I proposed in funding the university system, and I believe those need to be restored. Because one of the things as we think about the whole continuum of education, also K through 12, but then going on to the community college, going on to the university system, is to make sure that those systems are working well together. So something that I'm going to continue to push those systems to do is to make sure that if you get a degree at a community college or you get credits there, you can transfer them directly to UNH. And that there is a path for you to then go on from your associates to your bachelor's, and we're going to keep you right here in New Hampshire. But it's important that we have that funding there to do that. Finally, I'm going to talk about two other issues, and then I want to get to the conversation with Scott, because there are a number of issues that I could talk to you about that were priorities in my budget that I feel need to be addressed as the budget moves on. First, I want to talk to you about public safety. As a former Attorney General, there's probably, along with the military, of course, because I come from a military family, there's no other group more near and dear to my heart than our first responders that are out there every day keeping us safe when we're home on nights and weekends and holidays. And unfortunately, in 2018, there were changes made to our bail law that resulted in a revolving door of criminals. And no city felt that more than Manchester. I heard it directly from the Manchester police, the mayor. So recently we fixed that and we got that done. And I want to thank, first of all, the mayor, every member of the Manchester Board of Aldermen, the state legislature. In the end, the Senate came in on a bipartisan basis to get this done. It was New Hampshire at its best to finally fix this thing. And I can tell you right now, it's going to keep this city a lot safer, and it's going to stop those who are arrested and keep getting arrested or are repeat offenders from keep coming up and creating, unfortunately, harming more victims. In addition to that, we're continuing to push to fund what's called Granite Shield. Granite Shield is an operation that the Manchester Police, this is funding that really goes after the fentanyl dealers, and now the fentanyl dealers are combining the fentanyl with what's called xylazine, and this is a very dangerous combination because when fentanyl is combined with xylazine, Narcan is ineffective, and so you can see a rise in drug deaths and harm because of that. So going after that drug pipeline that often comes from Lowell and Lawrence up here, there's resources that I put in the budget to make sure we sustain this Granite Shield operation that the Manchester Police Department, the Sheriff's Department in Hillsborough, they've used this to create a task force together to go after that. We've also opened up a new partnership with the mayor of Lawrence, believe it or not. The mayor of Lawrence called me and said, hey, I'd like to come to New Hampshire and talk to you about this drug issue. And so I had the Manchester police there, I had our state police, others, and he brought his police chief, his prosecutor, and we're opening up new lines of communication and work across the border together to go after this drug issue. In addition to that, I'm very mindful that it's really important that we have prevention, treatment, and recovery from those who are struggling with a substance use disorder. And that's why a priority of mine, as this budget works its way through the process, is continuing to fund the Doorways program, the recovery-friendly workplace, and then also mental health. As you know, many people have co-occurring disorders. They struggle with a substance use disorder, and they struggle with mental health. And mental health impacts, I would dare say, everyone's family in this room in some capacity. So one of the priorities that I had in my budget was the community mental health centers and really making sure that that safety net is strongly supported within our state. So there was unfortunately a $36 million cut to what I had proposed to the mental health system in the House proposal. So that again is another priority for mine as this budget moves over to the Senate, that we get that restored. Because without those community mental health centers, that is very difficult to treat those who are in need and have that access within the community. And I would tell you, we need even more providers. That's a very important piece, but cutting that would not be a good thing for our mental health system. So in closing, there is much more work to be done on the budget, and so stay tuned, but I want you to know that I'm going to be fighting very hard for the priorities that I put forth in the budget, because I believe we need a budget that is not only fiscally responsible, that maintains our New Hampshire advantage, that we continue to be a state, of course, with a low tax burden, no income tax, no sales tax, the lowest business taxes in the region, a regulatory structure that is pro-business, but also at the same time, we need a budget that really serves our most vulnerable citizens. That is very important. That's an important function of government. And finally, invest in our future. Invest in things that we need to invest in, like I talked about our community college system, making sure that our kids are ready for the future and have the skills that they need to succeed. And again, Manchester's such a terrific city. All of you in the chamber, I thank you for what you do. Just count me in as a partner. The mayor and I talk all the time, but if anything that's on your mind, I would love to hear from you. The governor's office is here to serve you, and if there's an issue that you have with your business, and there's something that you believe that I can help with, Or let's say you think there's an opportunity to recruit a new business here or to expand your business. Please let me know. I would be happy to do whatever I can to sit at the table to make sure that we can all succeed together. This is a great state. I couldn't be prouder of New Hampshire, and to really have the privilege to serve as governor, but really I'm here to serve you. And I look forward to the conversation and the questions, and thank you very much for having me today. Yeah.
Access to get to the,
I think so.
it's a toggle switch. There you go. Can you hear me okay? Yes?
Can you hear me?
Excellent.
All right.
Bingo.
We figured that out,
All
Scott. First step.
First crisis averted. Well, Governor, thank you. And I'll start with a thank you on behalf of the board and of the chamber as well on that bail reform measure, because that's been a hot topic on our to-do list for now a few years. So thank you for making bipartisan progress on that and getting that done so quickly.
Yeah,
in the
thanks,
first
Scott.
few months.
It's a really good, strong fix, because there were some fixes made along the way that just didn't get us where we needed to be. And obviously, my prior life, I was a murder prosecutor. I'm confident that this is a good, hopefully we won't have any more issues, but I think it's in a good position.
Well, thank you for that. So let's talk budget just a little bit, and I'll confess I got into communications to avoid math, so I will say that I'm skating on thin ice with these questions. But I think one of the big differences between your proposal and what the House was proposing was essentially the revenue estimates.
Sure.
We've seen differences before, but I've never seen two documents in the budget process in New Hampshire where it's hundreds of millions apart.
That's right.
Can you offer any context to why those differences are so stark?
I can actually offer a lot of context. Let me just, one of the things when you're elected governor, the first thing you have to do is put together a 2-year budget, right? And it's funny because I had a chance I met with all the former governors just to kind of get their advice, and they were all like, this is, for example, Senator Shaheen, Senator Gregg, they served as senators too, as I did, and they're like, oh, this is going to be a lot faster transition for you. And they were right. So one of the first things you do, and one of the first things I did in putting together my budget, is you need to figure out where will the revenue be for the state. And so the players in state government that are really the most knowledgeable about that is, first of all, Lindsay Stepp, who is the Commissioner of the Department of Revenue Administration, because she tracks the receipts of the revenue coming in. And then we also have the benefit in the Department of Employment Security of having Brian Gottlieb. Many of you may be familiar with him because he did a lot of economic analysis in the private sector before he came to work for state government. And so bringing together the Commissioner of Revenue and our state's chief economist is really how I put my revenue estimates together. I brought them in the room, brought them together and said, okay, let's talk about the economic data, what you're seeing, what are your recommendations, where are we? And I can tell you this, that after the House put together their revenue estimates and they passed their budget last week, I had them both back in my office. And I brought them in, and they've continued to look at the data. Brian also looks at national economic data. He's very specific in terms of other economic data. He'll look in New Hampshire. It's a very interesting process. But so I had them in, and I asked you, okay, so tell me what you think of where the House put their revenue estimates. And they both told me they were way too low. Okay. And they said, we're still comfortable with what we recommended to you and where we are. So I'm confident now. One of the things, so January, February, March, we have actually outperformed our revenue estimates. The area that the House was most concerned on is that business revenue is still slightly down. And so we're going to keep our eye on April. But right now, if April performs where we think it's going to be, I'm confident that what I put in the budget on revenue estimates, or close to it, is correct.
Okay. So if the message and the work with the Senate is, let's see if we can't get this back closer to what my revenue
Yeah.
and spending blueprint is
I'll
going to
give
look
you an
like.
example. The Commissioner of Insurance just wrote a letter to the Senate and me saying that his estimates are 13 million higher than he even gave me, so.
Really? Okay.
So listen, I don't want a budget that has rosy revenue estimates we can't meet. Because guess who's the person who has to manage the budget? I have great respect for the legislature, but I'm the one who manages the executive branch. So to meet the budget, my job is, after this budget is passed, is to make sure we meet our budget. That's part of my job. So I certainly don't want a revenue estimate that we've got, that doesn't meet what we're actually spending. So, that's where I'm at.
Okay. And you addressed this in your message, but one of the key collaborations that I think happens in this room is between the business community and higher education. So we saw what your blueprint looked like for the university system, and it looked like the House reduced it by more than $50 million beyond what your number was as a grand total. So like almost a 50% cut in the state aid.
And they reduced the capital budget as well.
Right, in the capital budget. So can you talk a little bit about where that maybe potential putback is on your priority list going forward?
Yeah, I strongly believe. Listen, I sat down with the university system and the budget, and just so you know, putting the budget together, this was a more challenging budget environment. And I asked each agency in my budget to reduce. We reduced, and we cut things that we looked at. What do we need to do, and what is it that we'd like to do, but what are the priorities? And so I cut $125 million in general funds in my budget. So we looked for different ways to do things, and I sat down with the university system to work through the numbers that were proposed in my budget. And I know they would have liked more as well, but we worked together to get it at a number that they thought that they would allow them to sustain what they need to do. And then also in the capital budget, what I prioritized in there. And traditionally, there's a certain amount that the university gets in the capital budget as well. So it is a priority for me, both the university and the community college budget, that it really gets more in line with what I propose, because I think that's a very important investment for us.
One more follow-on budget, and I'll jump to other topics. The House budget effectively eliminates the Office of the Child Advocate, the State Arts Council, New Hampshire Human Rights Commission, and then presents a $42 million reduction in Medicaid payments, another $46 million from HHS. Can you reflect on those and where they are on your priority list as well?
Right, so let me just say, I support the Arts Council. It was in my budget. The Human Rights Commission needs, as you've probably followed, that needs a lot of work to get back to really being aligned to the work that needs to be done. There was an audit done of that commission, and unfortunately, there's a backlog of claims and things, but we're addressing it. I just appointed a new member of that commission. We want to get that commission in line, deal with the backlog, and make sure it's an effective operating commission for the people of New Hampshire. But it doesn't mean we don't need it. These are important claims that need to be addressed. So that was in my budget, because I really want to fix it and make sure it works, was my goal in the budget. The child advocate, first of all, as you know, we still have a lot more work to do on our child protection system, and having someone who is looking at what we're doing from an outside perspective and giving us feedback as to how we can be better. Again, I supported that in my budget too, because I want that outside feedback. I think it's good. I want us to be better in terms of how we serve and protect children. And I would like us to make sure that we have sort of a watchdog. I'm happy to have that, and I'm happy to have that feedback. So I certainly hope that is. And I actually talked to the Senate President about that the other day, and I think she agrees on that as well.
And the changes to Medicaid.
Oh, Medicaid.
Yeah, sorry. I gave you a laundry
I'm
list.
sorry. There was a 3% cut to providers of Medicaid, and that should be restored. Because what happened in the legislature in the last session, there were certain rate increases that were made, and so one of them was Medicaid, but we can't go backwards on that. So that 3% to providers needs to be restored. And there's some other issues on the mental health system that I mentioned that impact Medicaid too that have to be restored. So I worry that we won't have providers if we go backwards on the rate provisions. So that's certainly important to me.
I don't want to sound like a broken record when I'm talking about this is what the House did, what are you doing? But this is sort of where we are in the process right now. And I think a lot of those proposed cuts based on their revenue estimates are where concerns are. And there was another place where I believe there were millions that were reduced for programs that are supposed to support housing and expanded housing. Do you think the Senate is more in line with your priority, which I think is reflective as a top priority for New Hampshire?
Listen, I certainly don't want to speak for the Senate, but I've already met with obviously President Carson, Majority Leader Birdsell, and I think that there are a number of areas they want to address in this budget, and I think they're going to work very hard to do that. We share a lot of the same goals of making sure that, again, we're protecting and we're serving our most vulnerable citizens, but we're also investing in education, some of the things, mental health. So I feel confident that they're going to do some very important work on this budget. Listen, I'm going to be rolling up my sleeves, I can tell you right now, and I'm not shy about having an opinion on these things. So I'll be working with them and the House. Eventually this will be the budget, whatever the resolution is, will have to come to a committee of conference and come to a resolution and pass both bodies. So I'll be at that table and offering my opinion and working with them, because we do need a responsible budget for New Hampshire that also, serves the people that we need to serve and make sure that we're investing in our future.
One place where I think the two bodies, the House and you, were on the same page is in childcare. I think they largely supported some of the dollars you were devoting to childcare funding.
Childcare
in the
funding,
budget.
I believe, and then also it's important that we continue to support eligibility for the childcare scholarships that
Right.
were expanded. That is something that we've had more uptake on that, which is actually good, of families that are accessing this scholarship. So continuing that eligibility is critical.
Energy costs. I'll move quickly so that you have a few minutes to spend with people. We're all dealing with rising energy costs. It's one of those line items that we struggle with in the business community every single day. How does the state plan to help employers or small businesses, large businesses, tackle these kinds of costs?
Well, first of all, on energy, one of the things that we are different from our neighbors on, and we're going to continue to be, is I can tell you that I went to my first National Governors Association meeting, and we had a meeting of all the governors in New England. And they were a little funny. It was great. It was funny. They were like, hey, so Governor Sununu, he wouldn't always join with us on these, some of these regional initiatives on energy. And I said, so they wanted, where are you at? And it's pretty straightforward of where I'm at. Listen, our energy costs are too high. So I'm happy to join collectively if it's something that actually reduces energy costs in New Hampshire. But there have been some choices made by our neighbors that their rates are higher than ours. So I can't join if I think it's going to add to our energy costs. So that's going to be number one philosophy. Anything that's adding to our energy costs, that's not helpful to people who are already struggling and businesses in this state. But I also think we need to lean forward on, obviously, an all-the-above approach. There is an important place for renewables, whether that's solar, but also new technologies. I'd love to position New Hampshire on a regulatory basis for the small modular nuclear and making sure that we're thinking ahead of new technologies that could reduce our energy costs but allow us to produce our own energy here in a way that, of course, that's very carbon friendly and environmentally friendly. So I just think all of that is important. And again, New Hampshire, we need more energy. So energy of all forms will help drive down our costs. And from my perspective, again, anything I can help with businesses to be able to drive down your energy costs, I'm going to be a partner with you on that.
You mentioned in your speech that you were optimistic, despite the somewhat uncertainty that I think we face, especially at the federal level, where it's a little bit outside of our control. What are your office phones ringing a lot from, say, the nonprofits that rely on the federal funds that may or may not be in the same condition they were just a few months ago? What sort of feedback are you getting from the nonprofit community when it comes to federal funds?
Yeah, I would say not just nonprofit community. You have to understand that some of the things that have been announced impact the state agencies, and it flows down to the nonprofit community. For example, the $80 million that was focused on public health, that was proposed by the Trump administration as a reduction, that flows down to the nonprofit community. So the feedback is obviously, the uncertainty is very difficult for them to deal with. This can be their bottom line in terms of being able to sustain themselves. And so we're fighting. I mean, I can tell you every time I get a call like that, we're on the line. We're talking to the Trump administration about this. We've also filed administrative appeal on that case. And I'm pretty confident that the litigation applies to us too. In fact, I just read another case last night that basically there's been a suit on that, and I think we'll get the benefit of that too. So we'll fight in every front we can to make sure that we're fighting for New Hampshire. And to that nonprofit community, it's also important we get this state budget correct as well, because when you have things like a proposal for a 3% cut to Medicaid rates, that goes directly to a lot of our nonprofit community. So I know when they have faced federal uncertainty, we can't continue to give them state uncertainty too. So that's why I think it's really important that we get this budget right.
What's it like, the line of communication between the governor's office and the White House? How is it?
Well, we reach out and we do have communication, and we reach out. When I was down for the National Governors Association, they also had all the cabinet members in with the governors on both sides of the aisle. I had a one-on-one meeting with the Department of Transportation, Secretary Duffy. I had a one-on-one meeting. I went to see the Secretary of the VA. So we are communicating, and I'm going to push as much as I can to build relationships there, because my job is to fight for New Hampshire. And the more I have, I'm able to interface, the more I can fight, whether it's an issue of uncertainty for our nonprofit community, or whether it's advocating for resources for roads and bridges in New Hampshire, or in the case of the VA, there's a great project going on in our veterans campus in Franklin. That's wonderful, and I want them to put the VA clinic right in there. So this is, having served in the Senate, I certainly am doing all that I can to try to reach out and interact not only with our delegation, but also interact with the White House, basically for New Hampshire. I wake up every day and I was like, how does this impact New Hampshire, and what can I do to help New Hampshire? That's my job.
I've heard, and you can correct me if this is incorrect, I've heard from people that work pretty closely with you in the legislature, that wear the orange badges for lobbying and are at the State House all the time. I've heard, as a comparison, that you are more involved in some of the minutia than your predecessors when it comes to this process. And I think they mean it complimentary, not critical.
I was going to ask Ted Gorski what he thought over there. No.
Well, because, and again, I'm not trying to cast aspersions, but what I've heard stylistically about her predecessors is that you pitch your budget and then you kind of just walk away, get away from them, and let the legislature do what they're going to do, and then plug back in near the deadlines. And I'm hearing that your style is very different than that.
Yeah, it kind of is.
Kind of?
Well, listen, I feel like I try to engage whenever I can in the process on things that are important to me. And, I think sometimes there's been a little bit of surprise at that. I've had people be like, the governor cares about it? I'm like, yeah, the governor does care about this. So we're, I just feel like I want to make sure that where we end up in the end is really a strong and responsible budget for New Hampshire. So if I can engage along the process, along the way, to get things that we just talked about and to really try to make sure it gets on that path, I'm going to do it. I know that there's always good and bad to be involved in the soup, but I like to get in there and say, hey, let's do this. And that's certainly how I put my budget together, too. I like to try to understand the issues, understand what the numbers are, understand their priorities. And so having direct conversations with legislators, it also allows them to tell me what's important to them. So there may be other pieces where we can work together. So I feel like that's just part of my job.
topically, you mentioned it a second ago, just to make sure that I can check this box, infrastructure. How are we doing with our, and I know it's not the sexiest thing, but it's so important, how are we doing with our statewide infrastructure investments, roads and bridges, and what needs to be done to keep us rolling?
Yeah, I think there are a number of areas, especially that impact this area, that obviously the funding for infrastructure, continuing to make sure that we have a strong voice on those federal funds are critical, which is why I met directly with the Secretary of Transportation in my first trip to Washington, just to talk about New Hampshire's priorities and other funding that we're hoping to get. And then I also think that there are opportunities for us to look to do things better and more efficiently and faster, some of these projects that are critical to this area. So I'm going to be looking to do that, working with our Secretary of Transportation. But infrastructure is very, very important. There's a number of things involved in infrastructure too. When you think about the roads, the bridges, the dams, all the things that we're working on, there's always more we can invest in infrastructure, and I'm going to be looking for ways that we can even expand our investment in infrastructure.
So, last question of a more personal note. Let's see. Son is in junior in high school.
Yes.
Daughter's at the Air Force Academy.
Yes.
Your husband is a teacher. You're working 24/7 now as governor. And yet that's not enough. You ended up with an interesting decision just a few months ago and added to the family? Do I understand this correctly?
Yes.
There's a fur baby?
I did. So we have a dog, Thunder, who's a Belgian Malinois, and we got Thunder because I know some of you have been involved. There's a great charity, Swim with a Mission, and Thunder was one of the puppy, the Belgian Malinois puppy was one of the auction items at a Gold Star dinner this summer, and my husband got quite exuberant in the bidding process. And so in the middle of the gubernatorial campaign, yes, we got a Belgian Malinois puppy. So I can tell you this though, that puppy makes you move, right? If you've had a bad day and you're busy, you still gotta, that dog has a lot of energy, so you gotta be out walking with him. I run with him sometimes, and so he's made our family busier, but it's a great blessing to have him.
Is he a mama's boy or a daddy's boy?
He's definitely, daddy's like, he's kind of the lead dog there with the dog.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like other things in the family. He comes to mom when, once a lot, like last night he was laying down, like, rub my belly. So,
Nothing like having a dog with you at the end of a tough day.
Yeah, no, it's a great stress release. And then our son is really busy. He's playing baseball now, so we're all hands on deck. And my husband's pretty busy as a teacher, but I'm always glad to hear his perspective too, because as someone who teaches math, just what he sees happening with our kids is a good one for me to hear at the ground level as governor.
Governor Ayotte, we wish you the best. Thank you for this time. We
Thank you.
appreciate it so deeply.
Thank you.
And everybody to be able to chat with her. So thank you to the Greater Manchester Chamber and the presenting sponsor, Dartmouth Health, our investing sponsors, Bellwether Community Credit Union, advocate sponsors, Lamont Hanley and Associates, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, and New Hampshire Healthy Families. I'm supposed to thank myself as a partner. I'm not going to do that. And the New Hampshire Institute of Politics for being a fantastic host. Don't forget, mark your calendars, taco tour in Manchester, May 8th.
Oh, it's awesome, isn't it?
You got to do it. And our legislative dinner is May 12th with House and Senate leaders. So with that, thank you so much. Governor, thank you. Have a great day, everybody. Terrific.